Ah, everybody loves them, don't they? It's rare, especially, I'm not gonna lie, especially for DreamWorks Animation to see any franchise that really retains any kind of quality through three whole installments. And, as I understand it, though I've not watched all of them, but apparently all of the TV shows they've done are pretty solid as well for the level they're normally at, these kind of things. How to Train Your Dragon is a great series. It works so well. It was something DreamWorks were interested in developing from about 2004, which is so long ago. But would they do it again? Would they do it again? Will they just do a fourth one? Probably. Unfortunately, that's a distinct possibility. But we're going to hope not. We're going to hope that if they were to do it again, if they were, whether as a fully fleshed out, big budget live action TV show or just live action movies, that they would cast appropriately. And don't get me wrong, I'm not actually casting appropriately, really. It's kind of hard to say where they would actually want them starting out, okay? They were, I think, mostly meant to be about 14. The kids in the first film. I'm going to cast a little older than that. I'm going to cast 20-year-olds who could normally easily be playing still about 16, which I think is okay in general. And we're going to start with Hiccup. And quite simply Hiccup, and there's a lot of people who I'm sure will still say in the comments something like Tom Holland. Guys, we got to stop. And I don't want to address this too much, but we got to stop casting Tom Holland as a teenager. It's time. Yeah, Peter Parker's still going to be a teenager in the third Spider-Man film, but that's the limit. He's 25. He's played a bunch of teenage roles. It's time to move on, guys. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. We can move on. I'm going to cast Judah Lewis as Hiccup. I think Judah Lewis is great. And he's great in these kind of roles that people would often go, ooh, Tom Holland. This kind of introverted, geekier teenage kid. And they just cast Tom Holland like that because he's Spider-Man. But Judah Lewis would also do this really well. He did so well in both of the Babysitter films. I didn't love the second one, but he did very well in it as this high school kid who was still quite an introverted lead, still quite awkward. That is basically the level Hiccup is at. It's quite a commonplace teenage leading role. And it works really well, and that's why it's used so often. And Hiccup is a good version of this role. It can get annoying, or it can get dumb, or it can just not work very well for the film. Hiccup is perfect for the How to Train Your Dragon series, and Judah Lewis would work perfectly in that role. Now, Astrid is a little bit different. She's a much more confident kind of character, and she is very angry. She's unusual. She does seem, for a lot of the film, like she is just going to be a villain, like a side villain almost, and she ends up being the love interest and just fucking kick-ass as a character. And it's hard to cast again, but I want to cast Freya Allan, because I feel like she definitely has the look for it. It's confusing to remember how old she actually is as an actress, because she plays Ciri in The Witcher, who is so young. But she is 19 now, so she is actually around Judah Lewis's age and would be suited as a romantic lead for him. I feel she would love to play this kind of role. She's done a couple of other things, not much so far. The Witcher was her first big role. But she's done these more introverted roles. But especially with Ciri, there's a lot of power there, and Astrid is a character like that, but one that just unleashes instead of holding it in to any degree. And I feel like she'd have a lot of fun with that. I feel like she looks the part perfectly, and she'd be fantastic. Fishlegs is a fine character. He could easily be annoying in live action. That is a danger with any of these kind of comedic side piece characters. One like him, I could definitely see it happening. I could try and avoid it by casting Julian Dennison, who is good. He couldn't avoid that character being a bit annoying in Godzilla vs. Kong, but that's because their entire plot line was dumb. But a lot of the other roles he's done very well. He managed to play the more nerdy character in that very well, and it's just the same thing. There's this nerdy guy running about these giant, scary creatures. Yeah, that's actually the same thing. Stoic the Vast is a better character, let me tell you. He is great. Jared Butler was so fantastic. The idea of making that character super Scottish in this very clearly Scandinavian-based world was something, but I guess everyone else was American, so why not, right? I like the idea even more, though, of potentially casting Kristofer Hivju. Never once will I ever pronounce that correctly. He was Tormund Giantsbane on Game of Thrones. He is the only real human being who looks even remotely like Stoic the Vast does. You would still need, if you wanted him to be actually be that size, to bulk him up CGI and stuff, but you would literally have to do that with anyone that hasn't just won World's Strongest Man. So to cast an actual actor, you want someone like him. He is fantastic at this rogue, very just outright stereotypical Viking kind of role, and that is what Stoic is, with a more heartfelt side to his character at a certain point. Not for very long. Overall in the film, you just want to cast someone who could play the Viking role. And Kristofer is actually, he's only 42, he's actually younger than I thought, but that's still an age where you can play, especially in this kind of medieval setting. It's believable that he had kids, like, when he was, like, 20. So it's perfectly fine. Gobber the Belch, Stoic the Vast, and then Gobber the Belch. You gotta wonder, right? Is he okay with that? It doesn't matter. He's another jokey, memey character. I feel like you're in less danger of him becoming an annoying character in live action. I'd be happy to see somebody like Simon Pegg play him, because frankly, that is just perfect. That's just really easy. That's just Simon Pegg is perfect for this kind of role. It's a jokey, memey role. There is still a little bit of heartfelt in there, and he's just kind of a badass. And I feel like Simon Pegg can actually nail all of those parts he's done, like in Star Trek as Scotty, being able to be this kind of in the middle of all this action stuff and come off seriously, despite the fact that he is primarily a comedic actor, and that's what you want for this role. Gobber he's a fun character, and you'd want somebody who's just so lovable as an actor in general that there's no way they could become annoying in that role, or that role could become annoying, turned into anything else in live action. I think it'll be fine. Snotlout is an annoying character, and he's meant to be an annoying character. He's just a dickhead. He's just this dickhead kid, and he's overconfident, even though he doesn't actually become a side villain really either in the long term. Even less so than Astrid, actually. He's still always just this dick. He's just always this dick. There's never really characterization for him to a point where you go, actually, he's okay. I always kind of dislike him anyway. But I'm going to cast Tanner Buchanan, because I feel like he's just around a lot right now. He's very prominent right now. We have cast him a few times recently. And generally he does, there's always something a little bit darker, a little bit not quite so and fun about his roles, so I feel like that's something he could do really well. And he is, and I'm not quite sure if it matters hugely, Snotlout, Toughnut, and Roughnut, I'm not sure if they're maybe a little bit older than like Astrid and Hiccup. Like, there doesn't seem to be any other children, teenage-ish, or even like 10 years old or anything in that village in the first film. So that has me wondering, like, okay, so are there other kids, or do they just every few years take all of the kids in a large age group and just train them all? Or I don't know. Point is, Tanner Buchanan would be good at that. As for Toughnut and Roughnut, they, they're also just annoying characters. They just fill out the whole thing with these other kind of annoying characters, but you never really care, because Hiccup and Astrid are so great, and Toothless is there, and they're all so great. You just love them all so much that you don't really care what's going on with these other annoying kids in the background. That's why I haven't bothered watching the shows. I imagine it focuses more on all of them. I'm going to cast Ross Lynch as Toughnut, because they're just these blonde side characters. Ross Lynch is very good in these roles where he doesn't really know what's going on, like Harvey in the Sabrina series, but he's always around, and he doesn't come off that annoying in most roles I've seen him in. And similarly, Chloe Grace Moretz as Roughnut. Do they really look enough like to be twins? No. Am I ever going to be able to find a pair of actors around the right age who are actually twins, or who do look enough to like to be twins? Probably not. So I'm not that bothered about trying. I'm okay with just casting a couple who would, they've got the blonde hair, they look right with the blonde hair, and you put the long blonde hair on them and the hats and stuff, and they probably don't look dissimilar, and probably don't look similar still. And they're both just good at comedy, I feel, and that, just not talk about the Tom and Jerry film that Chloe Grace Moretz was in, but overall they're both just good at that. And so they could do those roles. You would have to go and cast unknowns to find a brother-sister, 20-ish years old, acting duo. I feel like they would be known for something if there was a pair like that could work for these roles. I don't think there is. So, there isn't really any point casting any of the dragons, generally. Even like Toothless, he doesn't actually make enough noise for us to really bother going in depth and casting any of them. And there's not actually a villain in the first film either. But I don't mind the idea of going a little bit deeper into the franchise to cast a couple of the cool villains that they do have in the second and third films. So, Drago Bloodfist. Okay. It's not a name. It's an unusual character. And he's just kind of this dirty old looking guy. Swings a stick around to control big dragon. Weird. But I'd like to cast Peter Stormare as Drago. Because, again, I just think it'd be nice in a live-action version of this to cast some people who are actually Scandinavian, and Peter Stormare is Swedish. He's been in so much, he's so good at playing villainous roles, and he's around the age where I can see him playing this older, wizened, like, angry, swinging your walking stick about your head kind of guy. Because Drago's not, as an actual... by himself, like, he's not that intimidating a fighter or anything, as far as I recall from the second film, so I don't think it's a big deal to cast somebody who is in their, like, mid-60s. And Peter Stormare is brilliant at playing villains. He'd be so good at that. As for Grimmell the Grizzly, right? Yeah, Grimmell the Grizzly. I don't know. I feel like it wasn't casting a dragon hunter wasn't the same as casting someone who was creating an army of dragons, but I mean, frankly, she felt a little bit like, alright, whatever, it's just another guy that's competent and evil at this stage. I want to cast Ben Mendelsohn because I feel like that's another kind of obvious one. He's great at these going grey, tall, thin, savage villains, and that is exactly the kind of bill that Grimmell fits, really. And Ben Mendelsohn's already done it in animated form. He's already done it in live-action form and a number of things. He's really, really good at just playing these villains right now, and I feel like Grimmell is the perfect kind of one to cast him as. Finally, if you're diving into the sequels, you probably also want to cast Valka, who is Hiccup's mother, who decided to protect dragons instead of him. No. Never really found it in my heart to forgive her, really like her as a character. She went off to protect the dragons, leaving Hiccup with his dad, who she knew was just this savage brute who would continue to kill dragons. If she'd worked to change his mind and the village's mind, instead of leaving, would she have saved more dragons? I'm going to cast Kellen Mcdonald. Why? Because I feel like you just still need the really strong Scottish parent in there. I don't know why that's important, but it feels like it is. For some reason, it feels like it's important that if you're getting rid of Gerard Butler and casting an actual Scandinavian, you just still gotta have that strong Scottish parent. Kellen Mcdonald is also around the right age to be playing a mother with Kristofer Hivju. She is great. And she's just, I feel like for quite a while now, even when she wasn't at a mothering kind of age, she was great at playing these mother-ish kind of roles. So I'd really like to see her do that. Also, I mean, she's just Kellen Mcdonald. She's just Kellen Mcdonald. I wanted a Scottish person that felt right. That is all for this one. There are a lot of fan casts on the channel. There's so many. There's potentially Fancast Live coming at some stage as a special one-off when we reach 100 Fancasts on the channel. And there's so much more on the channel, so you better subscribe for all of that garbage.